What is for you will come. This is the deepest message of Buddhism. Simple words, but they contain the key to ending so much suffering. Everything that truly belongs to you, the love, the peace, the path, the answers, will find you, not because you force it, not because you manipulate or control or grip until your hands go numb, but because you finally understand one truth that changes everything: impermanence. The Buddhists call it anicca, the reality that everything is constantly changing. Your emotions, your thoughts, your relationships, your body, this very moment. Nothing stays. Everything flows. And this isn't sad news. This is freedom. Because when you truly understand that nothing can be held forever, you stop trying to hold. You open your hands. You let go. And in that release, what's real can finally reach you. We spend our lives chasing, grasping, clinging to things we think will make us happy: relationships, achievements, possessions, identities. We exhaust ourselves trying to make permanent what is by nature temporary. We build our peace on sand and wonder why it crumbles. But there is another way. A way of flowing instead of forcing, of trusting instead of controlling, of recognizing that what truly belongs to you will arrive, not when you demand it, but when you're ready to receive it. Let me show you how this works, starting with a single falling leaf. Picture a tree in autumn, not the whole forest, just one tree. And on that tree, one leaf. It's been green all summer, drinking light, dancing in the breeze, doing exactly what leaves do. But now something shifts. The air turns cooler, the days grow shorter, and deep within the leaf's cells, a quiet transformation begins. The green fades. Gold appears, then orange, then deep crimson like fire caught in paper. And then, on a day no different than any other, the leaf lets go. It doesn't cling to the branch. It doesn't resist the pull of gravity. It doesn't cry out or bargain for more time. It simply releases. Watch it fall, slowly, gracefully, turning in the air like a dancer who knows the choreography by heart. It catches the light as it descends, casting tiny shadows on the ground below. Sometimes it spirals. Sometimes it glides in a straight line. The wind might catch it, carry it further than expected, lay it down gently among the roots. It lands softly on the ground, joining thousands of others. And there it will rest through winter, slowly breaking down, dissolving into soil, feeding the very tree it came from, becoming the nourishment for next spring's growth. The leaf doesn't see this as death. Nature doesn't recognize our categories of winning and losing, success and failure, holding on and letting go. It simply moves. It simply transforms. It simply is. And here's what's extraordinary. The tree doesn't mourn. It doesn't try to hold on to summer's leaves when autumn arrives. It doesn't resist winter's bareness or spring's emergence. It participates fully in each season, knowing something we seem to have forgotten, that every ending is preparation for a beginning we can't yet see. What does that leaf know that we've forgotten? It knows that change isn't the interruption of life. Change is life itself. That transformation isn't something that happens to you occasionally, but something happening through you, constantly. That letting go isn't loss, it's participation in the ancient rhythm of everything that exists. The leaf never resists autumn. But we do. Oh, we do. We resist the relationships that are shifting. We resist the body that's aging. We resist the job that no longer fits. We resist the person we're becoming. We resist the truth trying to surface. We resist the grief that needs to move through us. We spend enormous energy trying to freeze a moment, hold a feeling, keep a person, stop time itself. And in that resistance, we suffer. There's a word in Pali, the language of early Buddhist texts, anicca. It's usually translated as impermanence, but that English word doesn't quite capture it. Impermanence sounds philosophical, abstract, something monks contemplate in monasteries. But anicca is immediate. It's happening right now, in your breath, different with each inhale, in your thoughts, arising, changing, dissolving faster than you can track them. In your body, billions of cells dying and being born as you listen to these words. Anicca means everything conditioned is in flux. Everything that arises passes away. Nothing, not your joy, not your pain, not your youth, not your certainty, not this very moment, nothing stands still. The Buddha taught this not as theory, but as direct observation. He said, "All conditioned things are impermanent. Work out your own salvation with diligence." Notice he didn't say, "Believe this." He said, "Work it out, investigate it, see it for yourself, test it against your actual experience." This is crucial. Buddhism doesn't ask for blind faith. It asks for honest observation. Look at your life and see if this is true. Has anything in your experience ever remained exactly the same? So test it now. Think of something you were absolutely certain about 5 years ago. A belief you held. A goal that consumed you. A relationship you thought would last forever. A version of yourself you were sure was permanent. Where is it now? Changed, isn't it? Or completely gone? This isn't sad news, even though our first reaction might be sadness or fear. This is actually the most liberating truth you'll ever encounter. Because if everything changes, then your pain isn't permanent. Your fear isn't forever. Your mistakes don't define you eternally. The cage you feel trapped in has no locked door. The bars themselves are dissolving. The depression you're experiencing right now will shift. The loneliness will transform. The confusion will clarify. Not because I'm making promises, but because change is the fundamental nature of conditioned reality. But we don't see it that way at first. We fight it. Let me tell you about someone who fought it for years. Her name was Maya, and she was in love with a man who was slowly leaving. Not dramatically. There was no affair, no betrayal, no explosive fight. Just a quiet drifting, like two boats whose ropes have come untied, moving apart in barely perceptible increments. She felt it, in the way he looked past her, instead of at her, in the conversations that used to spark and now just fizzled, in the space in the bed that seemed to grow wider each month. His goodnight kisses became automatic, a ritual emptied of meaning. The questions he used to ask about her day stopped coming. When she spoke, she could see his mind elsewhere, just waiting for his turn to speak or checking out entirely. But Maya refused to see what she was seeing. She worked harder, planned more dates, initiated more conversations, suggested couples therapy, weekend getaways, new routines. She analyzed everything. Was it something she said? Something she didn't say? The weight she'd gained, the promotion she took, the friends she kept. She was exhausting herself, trying to hold water in her hands. At night, she'd lie awake, creating scenarios where things got better. She'd remember the early days, the way he used to look at her, the inside jokes, the easy intimacy. And she'd think, if I can just get back to that, if I can just figure out the right combination of words or actions, I can fix this. She tried being more attentive, then tried giving him more space. She tried being more independent, then tried being more available. She bought new clothes, changed her hair, planned surprise dinners. Nothing worked because nothing could work. You cannot will someone back into a feeling they've grown out of. But you can't go back to spring when autumn has arrived. One evening, they were sitting on the couch, both scrolling their phones in silence. Not the comfortable silence of long companionship, but the hollow silence of two people with nothing left to say. And suddenly, Maya saw herself from outside herself. She saw a woman clinging to a rope attached to nothing. She saw herself gripping so hard her hands were numb, holding onto a version of a relationship that no longer existed, fighting a current so strong it had already carried them both somewhere else entirely. And in that moment, something in her whispered, "You're fighting the tide." Not in blame, not in defeat, just in recognition. She'd been trying to freeze time, to make permanent what was, by its very nature, temporary, to force two people who had grown in different directions to somehow shrink back into old shapes that no longer fit. The relationship had already ended. It had been ending for months, maybe years. She was just refusing to see it. That night, Maya did something she'd been avoiding for so long. She stopped fighting. Not by having a dramatic conversation, not by making demands or ultimatums. She simply stopped resisting what was already true. She let herself feel the grief she'd been outrunning. She let herself acknowledge that this love, which had been real and beautiful and necessary, had also changed into something else. She let the truth be true. And in that surrender, not giving up, but giving in to what is, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Relief. The exhaustion lifted. The constant tension in her chest loosened. She could breathe again. Within weeks, they had the conversation that needed to happen. It was sad, yes. There were tears. But there was also a strange tenderness, a mutual recognition that they'd both been holding onto a ghost. And 6 months later, Maya would tell you this: I spent 2 years trying to save something that was already gone. And the moment I stopped fighting reality, reality became bearable. Then more than bearable. It became spacious, like I could finally see the sky again. This is what happens when you stop resisting impermanence. Now, let's turn this toward you. Not as philosophy, but as direct experience. What's changing in your life right now? Maybe it's a job that used to excite you but now feels like you're wearing shoes 2 sizes too small. You show up, you do the work, but something's different. The passion faded. You're not sure when it happened, but you know it has. You used to wake up, energized, ready to tackle projects. Now you hit snooze 3 times and drag yourself through the morning. The work that used to challenge you now just drains you. You're good at it, maybe even great at it, but it doesn't feed you anymore. Maybe it's a friendship that's shifting. You still love this person, but the calls get shorter, the texts more sporadic, and when you do connect, there's a subtle distance neither of you mentions. You're growing in different directions, and pretending you're not takes more energy than it used to. You remember when you used to talk for hours, finish each other's sentences, couldn't wait to share every detail of your lives. Now the conversations feel effortful, like you're both trying to maintain something that's naturally dissolving. And maybe that's okay, even though it hurts. Maybe it's your own body. You look in the mirror and see lines that weren't there before. Grey hairs multiplying. Energy that used to be abundant, now rationed. Time is having its way with you, as it has its way with everyone, and no amount of skincare or exercise can stop what's already in motion. You notice you can't eat the way you used to without consequences. You need more sleep to feel rested. The aches linger longer. Your body is changing, aging, which isn't failure. It's just time doing what time does. Maybe it's a version of yourself you've outgrown. The identity you wore so comfortably for years now feels like a costume. Who you're becoming doesn't match who you've been, and the gap between them creates a strange internal dissonance. The beliefs you held with certainty now seem too small. The goals that drove you feel hollow. The person you thought you'd be by now isn't who you are, and you're not sure if that's disappointment or liberation. Whatever it is, notice it, and notice what you're doing with it. Are you resisting, pretending it's not happening, trying to force things back to how they were, bargaining with reality, exhausting yourself, swimming against a current that's stronger than you? Most of us do this. We spend incredible amounts of energy resisting what's already happening. We stay in jobs we've outgrown because leaving feels like failure. We maintain friendships past their natural end because letting go feels like betrayal. We fight aging as if it's a moral failing instead of a biological fact. We cling to old identities because not knowing who we are feels terrifying. But here's what the Buddhists understood 2,500 years ago, and what science confirms now. Resistance creates suffering. Acceptance creates peace. Not the acceptance of defeat, not passive resignation, but the acceptance of reality. The deep, cellular acknowledgement, this is changing, and that's okay. When you stop fighting what is, something miraculous happens. The fear diminishes. The tension releases. You can see clearly again. And from that clarity, you can respond wisely instead of reacting desperately. There's a teaching in Zen that says, you can never step in the same river twice. Think about that. A river, always flowing, always moving, always changing. The water you see now will be a mile downstream in minutes. New water takes its place. The river looks the same, but it's never the same river. And you can never step in as the same person twice either. The you who stepped in a moment ago is already different. Different thoughts, different cells, different breath, everything in constant motion. The river doesn't apologize for flowing. It doesn't resist its own nature. It doesn't try to be yesterday's river. It simply moves, adapts, continues. When it encounters a boulder, it doesn't stop. It doesn't demand the boulder move. It flows around it, over it, eventually through it, patiently wearing it down over centuries. The river teaches patience without passivity. It's constantly active, constantly moving, but never forcing. It finds the path of least resistance, which isn't weakness, it's wisdom. This is wisdom. Your emotions work the same way. They're not solid things that move in and stay forever. They're more like weather systems, arriving, intensifying, passing. The anger that feels overwhelming right now, it's moving through you. The sadness that seems endless, it's cresting and will eventually recede. The anxiety that grips your chest, it arose from conditions, and when those conditions change, it will dissolve. Let me tell you what this looks like in real time. A man loses his father suddenly. Heart attack. No warning. Gone. The grief comes like a tidal wave. For days, he can barely function. It's all-consuming. This pain, sharp, and relentless and suffocating. He can't sleep without seeing his father's face, can't eat without remembering meals they shared, can't walk into the garage without expecting to find him there, working on some project, offering advice nobody asked for, but everyone needed. But somewhere in the second week, someone who practices meditation tells him, "Don't run from it. Watch it. Watch how it moves." So he tries. The next time the grief surges, and it does. It comes in waves. He doesn't distract himself. He doesn't push it away. He sits with it. He notices where he feels it in his body, the tightness in his throat, the heaviness in his chest, the trembling in his hands. He notices the thoughts that come with it, the regrets, the memories, the things unsaid. And he watches. At first, it's unbearable. The grief swells, peaks, feels like it will break him into pieces he'll never be able to reassemble. But then, and this is what changes everything, it starts to shift. Not disappear, not go away completely, but shift, soften slightly, lose some of its sharp edges, like a wave that crests and then, inevitably, recedes. He realizes the grief isn't one solid thing sitting on his chest forever. It's moving. It comes in. It peaks. It passes. Then it comes again, and again it passes. Over weeks and months, the waves get further apart. They're still powerful when they come, but they don't last as long. And between the waves, there's space. Space to breathe. Space to remember his father with warmth instead of only pain. Space to live. He learns that grief doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to carry love in a different form. This is what happens when you stop resisting the river of emotion and let it flow through you. The grief doesn't destroy you. The anger doesn't consume you. The fear doesn't freeze you. You discover you're bigger than any single emotion. You're the space in which all emotions arise and pass. So what remains? If everything changes, your body, your thoughts, your emotions, your relationships, your circumstances, what stays? This is the deepest question. And the answer is both simple and profound. Awareness remains. You, not the you of roles and identities and stories, but the you that's aware of all of it. That awareness is constant. Think of the sky. Clouds come and go. Dark storm clouds, light wispy ones, no clouds at all. The weather changes constantly. Sunrise, rain, thunderstorms, clear blue afternoons, starry nights. But the sky remains. The sky is never threatened by the weather. It holds it all. The storms, the sunshine, the fog, without being changed by any of it. You are like that sky. Your thoughts are clouds passing through. Your emotions are weather, temporary systems. Your body is changing, growing, aging, healing, hurting. Your circumstances shift, like seasons. But the awareness that witnesses all of this, that knows your thinking, that feels the emotion, that experiences the body, that awareness is unchanging. This awareness doesn't need defending. It doesn't need improving. It doesn't age, or diminish, or break. It simply is, has always been, will always be, the steady ground beneath all the movement. When you were 5 years old, aware of your surroundings, that same awareness is here now. When you're 90, it will still be here. The content of your awareness changes constantly. Different thoughts, different feelings, different experiences, but awareness itself remains. This is your true home. Not the things you've accumulated, not the achievements you've collected, not the identity you've built, not even the body you inhabit. Your home is this aware presence that's been with you since your first memory and will be with you until your last breath. The Buddha taught, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Not the you that's successful or beautiful or right. Not the you that's fixed or perfect or permanent, but the you that is, the awareness itself, the being beneath all the becoming. This is what deserves your love, not your accomplishments, not your appearance, not your performance, but your simple existence as conscious presence. When you rest in that awareness, change stops being threatening. You can let the leaf fall because you know you're not the leaf. You're the tree, the earth, the whole cycle. You can let the relationship end because you know you're not defined by who loves you. You can let the job go because you know you're not your title. You can let the old version of yourself die because you know something truer is being born. You can watch your thoughts without being consumed by them. You can feel your emotions without being destroyed by them. You can experience change without losing yourself in it. This is freedom. Not freedom from change. That's impossible. Everything changes. But freedom in change. Freedom to flow with it instead of being broken by it. Freedom to let go because you know letting go isn't loss, it's liberation. But if everything passes, if nothing can be held, if change is the only constant, why do we grip so tightly? Why do we exhaust ourselves trying to hold water in our fists? Why do we suffer so deeply when we lose what was always going to leave? Let me tell you about a garden, and a gardener who loved too much in the wrong way. Because the answer to why we suffer isn't found in what changes. It's found in how we hold on. There was once a gardener who loved her plants with her whole heart. She'd wake before dawn to check on them, inspect each leaf for signs of distress, measure the soil's moisture with her fingers. Her tomatoes were the pride of the neighborhood. Her roses bloomed fuller. than anyone else's. People would stop by just to see what she'd grown, to ask for advice, to admire her dedication. She knew everything about each plant, when to prune the lavender, how much sun the peppers needed, which fertilizer worked best for the herbs. Her garden was her joy, her meditation, her creative expression. But something started to shift. Her love became worry. Her care became control. She couldn't walk past her garden without stopping to adjust something, fix something, improve something. She watered the plants every day, sometimes twice. Even when the soil was damp, she'd add more. Better too much than too little, she thought. She pruned obsessively, cutting away anything that looked even slightly imperfect. She added fertilizer every week, then every few days, convinced more nutrients meant healthier growth. She'd check on them before work, during lunch breaks, the moment she got home. She researched endlessly, reading articles, watching videos, joining forums where she'd post photos, asking if her plants looked healthy enough. The plants began to suffer. The tomatoes' roots, drowning in too much water, started to rot. The roses, stressed from constant pruning, stopped blooming altogether. The herbs she'd babied so carefully grew weak and spindly, their leaves pale instead of vibrant green. The soil became compacted from overworking. The stems grew brittle from too much fertilizer burning their roots. The garden that had once thrived now looked sickly, struggling, dying despite all the attention, or perhaps because of it. She couldn't understand it. She loved them so much. She was doing everything for them. Why were they dying? She worked even harder, convinced the solution was more effort, more intervention, more control. But the more she did, the worse things became. A neighbor, an older woman who'd been gardening for 40 years, finally said what needed to be said. "You're loving them to death." The gardener didn't understand. "Plants need space to grow," the older woman explained gently. "They need to reach for water, to develop strong roots, by searching for nutrients. When you give them everything before they need it, when you control every aspect of their growth, you don't help them. You weaken them. Sometimes love means stepping back." The gardener stood there, looking at her dying plants, and finally understood. Her love had become fear. Her care had become control, and in trying to protect them from every possible harm, she'd become the harm itself. This is the paradox at the heart of attachment. The very thing we do because we love, the gripping, the controlling, the desperate holding on, is often what destroys what we're trying to preserve. Our attachment doesn't protect what we treasure. It suffocates it. But what is attachment, really? It's one of the most misunderstood concepts, especially when people first encounter Buddhist teachings. Many think it means you shouldn't care about anything, that you should become cold and detached, that love itself is the problem. That's not it at all. Attachment is not love. Love is the warm sun that helps things grow. Attachment is the hand that grabs the flower and won't let it bloom. Love says, I want you to be happy. Attachment says, I need you to be happy so I can be happy. Do you feel the difference? It's subtle but crucial. Love is about the other person's well-being. Attachment is about your own security, disguised as care for them. Love is expansive, generous, open-handed. It wants the best for the other person, even when that means they might grow beyond you, choose differently than you'd prefer, take paths you can't follow. Love celebrates someone's promotion, even when it means they'll move away. Love supports someone's growth, even when they outgrow you. Love wants someone to flourish, even when their flourishing doesn't include you. Attachment is contractive, possessive, tight-fisted. It wants the other person to stay exactly as they are, to need you, to choose you, to remain within the boundaries you've drawn. Attachment secretly resents growth that doesn't include you. Attachment feels threatened by someone's independence. Attachment needs the other person to stay small so you can feel necessary. Think of holding a bird. If you grip it too tightly, you'll crush it. If you hold it gently with an open palm, it might stay or it might fly away, but either way, it lives. Attachment is the clenched fist that kills what it's trying to keep. Love is the open hand that allows life to be what it is. And here's what's hard to see at first. Attachment isn't actually about the other person at all. It's about you. It's about your fear. When you're attached to someone, what you're really saying is, I'm afraid I'm not enough without you. When you're attached to an achievement, you're saying, I'm afraid I'm worthless without this accomplishment. When you're attached to how you look, you're saying, I'm afraid no one will love me if I'm not beautiful. When you're attached to being right, you're saying, I'm afraid my identity will crumble if I'm wrong. When you're attached to your plans working out, you're saying, I'm afraid I can't handle what I didn't choose. Attachment is fear, wearing a mask of love. The Buddha saw this clearly 2,500 years ago. He taught, the root of suffering is attachment. Not desire itself, the natural wanting that's part of being human, but tana, the word in Pali, which means thirst, craving, the desperate clinging that comes from believing you'll die without this thing, this person, this outcome. That's what causes suffering. And the cruelest part is we learned this. Nobody is born attached. Watch a baby with a toy. They'll play with it intensely, completely absorbed. Then they'll drop it and reach for something else without a second thought. They don't cling. They experience, enjoy, and release naturally. A toddler can be utterly devastated that their balloon flew away, crying inconsolably. 5 minutes later, they've completely forgotten the balloon and are fascinated by a butterfly. They move through emotions without getting stuck in them. But then we teach them to grip, Hold on to that, or you'll lose it. Don't let anyone take what's yours. If you're not careful, someone else will get it. You have to fight for what you want. Winner takes all. Second place is the first loser. We're raised in a culture of scarcity, where the message, spoken or unspoken, is always, there's not enough. Not enough love to go around. Not enough success for everyone. Not enough safety, security, belonging. You have to fight for your peace and then defend it with everything you have. And worse, we're taught that love must be earned. Be good, and maybe you'll be loved. Achieve something, and maybe you'll be valued. Look right, act right, succeed, perform, prove yourself worthy, and then, maybe then, you'll receive the love and acceptance you're desperately hungry for. So we learn to grip, to perform, to make ourselves indispensable, to control outcomes because we're terrified that if we don't, we'll be abandoned, rejected, forgotten. We learn that our worth is conditional, that we're only as valuable as our last achievement, our current appearance, our usefulness to others. The exhaustion of this is profound. Trying to be perfect so you won't be left. Trying to anticipate every need so you'll be necessary. Trying to control how others see you, feel about you, respond to you. It's like running on a treadmill that only goes faster the longer you're on it. And here's what we need to understand with deep compassion. This isn't your fault. You learned to grip because you were taught that love is conditional, scarce, something that must be earned and defended. You learned to attach because you weren't shown that you're inherently worthy, that love isn't something you have to chase or trap or hold hostage. The gripping made sense, given what you were taught. It was a survival strategy in a world that felt unsafe. But now you can learn something different. Let me tell you about Rachel. She met Daniel in her late 20s, and from the first date, something clicked. He was funny, thoughtful, present in a way the other men she'd dated never were. He asked real questions and listened to the answers. He remembered small details she mentioned. Within months, they were inseparable. Rachel felt like she'd finally found it, the relationship that would last, the person who truly saw her, the future she'd been imagining since she was a girl. But somewhere around the 2-year mark, things started to shift. Small things at first. He'd choose to see his friends instead of her on a Saturday night. He'd get quiet when she brought up moving in together. The future they used to talk about with excitement became a topic he'd change the subject away from. The texts that used to come throughout the day slowed to a trickle. The way he used to look at her, like she was the most interesting person in the room, faded. The easy intimacy they'd shared started to feel forced, performative. Rachel felt it like a dropping in her stomach, a sense that she was losing him, slowly, like sand through fingers. So she did what many of us do. She tried to hold on tighter. She became more available, more accommodating, She'd cancel plans with friends if he was free. She'd agree to things she didn't really want because she was afraid saying no would push him away. She started monitoring his social media, reading into his every text, analyzing his tone for signs of withdrawal. When he'd pull back, she'd pursue. When he'd go quiet, she'd fill the silence with questions, reassurances, attempts to fix whatever was broken. She suggested date nights with elaborate plans. She bought tickets to shows she knew he'd like. She tried to recreate the magic of their early days, as if the right activity or the perfect gesture could restore what was fading. She was exhausting herself, and she knew it, but she couldn't stop. Because in her mind, if she just tried hard enough, loved well enough, was patient enough, supportive enough, attractive enough, understanding enough, he'd stay. The relationship would be saved. They'd get back to how things were in the beginning. But you can't love someone into staying. You can't perform your way into being chosen. The harder she gripped, the more he withdrew. It became a painful dance. Her pursuing, him retreating, her pursuing harder, him pulling further away. Until one night, after yet another conversation, where she tried to get him to talk about their future, and he gave vague, non-committal answers, she sat alone in her apartment, and finally let herself see what she'd been refusing to see for months. He didn't want this anymore. Not because she'd done something wrong, not because she wasn't enough, but because people change, feelings shift, and sometimes love transforms into something else. Care, respect, fondness, but not the kind of love that builds a life together. She'd been holding on to a relationship that had already ended in his heart. The attachment she thought was commitment was actually fear. Fear of being alone. Fear that if this didn't work out, maybe nothing would. Fear that being chosen by him meant she was worthy, and not being chosen meant she wasn't. She was using the relationship to validate her own worth. That night, Rachel made a choice, not to end the relationship dramatically, but to release her grip. She stopped monitoring his phone, stopped analyzing every interaction, stopped contorting herself to be what she thought he needed. She started saying no when she meant no, started making plans that didn't revolve around his availability, started reconnecting with friends she'd neglected. And something unexpected happened. Not the fairy tale ending where he suddenly realized what he was losing and came running back. That's not how life works. Instead, the relationship ended within a month. Quietly, sadly, but honestly. They had the conversation that had been waiting to happen. He admitted he'd been feeling distant for a while but didn't know how to say it without hurting her. She admitted she'd known, but had been too afraid to face it. They cried together, acknowledged what had been real and beautiful, and let it go. And Rachel, who'd been terrified that losing him would destroy her, discovered something remarkable. She was okay. Not immediately happy. There was grief, real and deep. There were nights of crying, mornings of waking up and remembering all over again that it was over. But underneath the grief was something she hadn't felt in years. Space. Space to breathe. Space to be herself without editing. Space to discover that her worth wasn't dependent on being chosen by one person. She started doing things she'd stopped doing. Painting, which had been her love before the relationship consumed all her creative energy. Running in the mornings without worrying about being available if he texted. Saying yes to spontaneous plans without checking with someone first. 6 months later, she'd tell her therapist, "I thought I was loving him, but I was actually just terrified of losing the idea of who I'd be with him. I was holding on to save myself, not to honor what was real between us." This is what attachment does. It masquerades as love, as commitment, as caring deeply. But really it's trying to control outcomes to avoid feeling the feelings we're most afraid of. Inadequacy, loneliness, unworthiness. And here's the fundamental problem with attachment. We attach to things we believe are permanent. But nothing is permanent. Think of building a sandcastle at the beach. You can build it beautifully, with towers and moats and intricate details. You can spend hours perfecting it, smoothing the walls, decorating with shells. You can protect it from other people's feet, shield it from the wind. But the tide is coming in. It's always coming in. And no amount of protecting, defending, or wishing will stop the water from reclaiming the sand. You can build walls around your sandcastle, dig moats to divert the water, but the ocean is bigger than your defenses. The ocean always wins. That's what we do with our lives. We attach to our youth, even though aging is guaranteed. We attach to our jobs, even though industries change and companies fold. We attach to our identities, even though we're constantly evolving. We attach to other people's love, even though feelings shift and people grow in different directions. We attach to our health, forgetting that bodies break down. We attach to our certainties, ignoring that new information changes understanding. We attach to our plans, as if life doesn't have its own ideas. We build our happiness on temporary foundations, and then wonder why we're constantly anxious, constantly afraid, constantly trying to hold things in place that were never meant to stay still. This is guaranteed suffering. Not because life is cruel, but because we're asking reality to be something it's not, permanent, controllable, fixable, through sheer force of will. Imagine making a perfect cup of tea. You choose the right leaves, heat the water to exactly the right temperature, steep it for precisely the right amount of time. You pour it into your favorite cup and take that first sip. Perfect warmth, perfect flavor, that moment of pure satisfaction. And then you set it down. You answer a text, take a phone call, get distracted by something. When you come back 5 minutes later, the tea has cooled. 10 minutes later, it's lukewarm. 20 minutes later, it's cold. This isn't a tragedy. This is nature. This is what happens. Heat dissipates. Temperature equalizes. The laws of physics don't pause because you wanted that perfect warmth to last. But watch what we do. We get upset. We feel disappointed. We think something went wrong. We might even heat it up again, trying to recreate that first perfect sip, but it's never quite the same. What if instead we appreciated the tea at every temperature? The first hot sip, savor it fully, knowing it's fleeting. The warm middle phase, notice how the flavor changes, becomes mellower. The cool end, appreciate it for what it is, not resent it for what it's no longer. This is how we could live with everything. Enjoying what is, while it is, without demanding it. Stay the same forever. The relationship in its passionate beginning, beautiful. The relationship as it matures and deepens, beautiful in a different way. The relationship as it naturally concludes, sad perhaps, but also complete, also part of the cycle. The problem is, we're attached to the hot tea. We want it to stay hot forever, and when it doesn't, we suffer. So what does love without attachment actually look like? It looks like appreciating a sunset without needing to own it. You see the sky turn gold and pink and orange. You feel your heart open with beauty. You're moved, touched, filled with wonder. You might even cry at the sheer magnificence of it. And then the sun sets completely. Darkness comes, and you don't grieve the sunset as a loss. You're grateful you witnessed it. You don't try to photograph it obsessively, trying to capture what can't be captured. You don't resent that it ended. You don't spend the evening wishing it had lasted longer. You let it be what it was, a moment of beauty, complete in itself. That's love without possession. It's being with someone, not needing someone. It's enjoying someone's presence while they're here, without making your happiness dependent on them staying forever. It's wanting good things for them, even when those good things take them away from you. Let me tell you about a father named James. His daughter Emma was his whole world. He'd raised her mostly alone after his wife died when Emma was 3. They were close in a way that made other people envious. Best friends, as much as parent and child. He'd been there for everything. First day of school, soccer games, heartbreaks, college applications, graduation. They had rituals, Sunday morning pancakes, Friday movie nights, long walks where they'd talk about everything and nothing. But when Emma turned 22 and got a job offer across the country, James felt something inside him panic. He didn't say it out loud, but his mind immediately started creating reasons she shouldn't go. The job wasn't that great. The city was too expensive. She'd be so far from family. What if something happened and he wasn't there? He caught himself doing what attachment does, building a case for why the other person should stay small, should limit their growth, should choose safety over possibility. And then he remembered something his own father had told him years ago. If you love something, let it be free. If it comes back, it's yours. If it doesn't, it never was. James realized his fear wasn't about Emma. It was about him, about losing his role, his purpose, the identity he'd built around being her primary person. Who was he if he wasn't her dad in the daily, immediate sense? What would his life look like without her presence filling it? The questions scared him. So he made a different choice. He helped her pack. He drove her to the airport. He told her he was proud of her courage. And when she hugged him goodbye, tears in both their eyes, he felt the grief and the fear and the love all at once, and he let her go anyway. That's love with open hands. Emma thrived in her new city. She called regularly, sometimes just to tell him about her day. She visited for holidays. She sent photos of her new apartment, her new friends, the life she was building. Their relationship didn't end. It transformed into something more adult, more mutual, more free. And James discovered that his life didn't end either. He had space now to rediscover who he was, beyond being a father. He started dating again, tentatively at first, then with real openness. Took up hobbies he'd set aside: woodworking, hiking, photography. Found that he could be whole without being needed in the same way. A year later, Emma would tell her friends, "My dad gave me the greatest gift. He loved me enough to let me go." This applies to everything. Your job, do it well, care about it deeply, but know that you're not your position. When it ends or changes, you remain. Your appearance, take care of yourself, appreciate your body, but don't build your worth on it. Your body will change, age, transform, and you'll still be you. Your beliefs, hold them with conviction, but loosely enough that you can evolve. The you of 10 years from now will see things differently, and that's growth, not betrayal. Your achievements, be proud of them, but don't make them your identity. What you've done isn't who you are. This is the practice. Loving fully without gripping, caring deeply without controlling, giving yourself completely, while knowing that nothing belongs to you permanently, not even yourself. So if attachment creates suffering, if the clenched fist kills what we're trying to protect, how do we actually open our hands? How do we love without strangling? How do we care without controlling? How do we let go of what we've been gripping for so long that we've forgotten what open hands feel like? The practice begins here, right now, with understanding that letting go isn't loss. It's making space for what's real. Before we go any further, I want you to do something with me. Make a fist right now. Squeeze it tight as you can. Feel your fingers pressing into your palm, your nails digging into skin. Feel your knuckles whiten. Feel the tension travel up your forearm, into your wrist, your elbow. Notice how the tightness doesn't stay in your hand. It radiates outward. Your arm gets rigid. Your shoulder lifts slightly. Maybe you're even holding your breath without realizing it. Hold it. Keep holding. Notice what this feels like. There's strain, isn't there? Discomfort. Your hand starts to shake slightly from the effort. Your muscles fatigue. If you hold long enough, it actually hurts. This is what we do all day, every day, with our attachments. We hold them this tight, creating unnecessary pain, exhausting ourselves with the effort of gripping. Now slowly, very slowly, open your hand. Feel each finger release. Feel your palm expand. Feel the blood flow return, tingling slightly as circulation resumes. Notice the relief, the softness, the ease that comes with opening. Take a breath, a full one, now that you're not holding tension. This is letting go in the body. That tight fist, that's how we hold our attachments. We grip them so hard, we cut off circulation to our own lives. We squeeze so tight, we create pain where there doesn't need to be pain. And every attachment you carry lives somewhere in your body as tension. The relationship you're clinging to, you feel it in your chest, that constant tightness, like you can't quite take a full breath. The job you're white-knuckling your way through, it sits in your shoulders, rock-hard knots that no amount of massage can fully release. The control you're desperate to maintain, it lives in your jaw, clenched even in sleep, grinding your teeth down to nothing. The grudge you won't release, it's in your stomach, a perpetual knot of acid and anger. Your body knows what your mind doesn't want to admit. Holding on hurts. But here's what confuses people when they first hear about letting go, especially in Buddhist teaching. They think it means giving up, becoming passive, not caring anymore. They think letting go means you stop trying, stop loving, stop wanting anything at all, that you become some detached, emotionless person, floating through life without investment or care. They imagine a monk in robes, expressionless, removed from the world, claiming nothing matters because attachment is suffering. That's not what letting go is. That's not what the Buddha taught. Letting go is not indifference. It's not apathy. It's not giving up on what matters or becoming cold to protect yourself from pain. It's not quitting your job because work is attachment. It's not leaving your relationship because love is attachment. It's not stopping to care about outcomes because caring is attachment. It's not pretending you don't want things. It's not suppressing your desires or denying your humanity. It's not becoming a robot who feels nothing. That's spiritual bypassing, using spirituality as an excuse to avoid life, to avoid responsibility, to avoid the beautiful mess of being human. Real letting go is something entirely different. It's not cold withdrawal. It's warm release. It's not checking out. It's fully showing up without demanding a specific result. It's not stop caring. It's caring so much that you're willing to let things be what they are, instead of forcing them to be what you want. You can work hard at your job while letting go of your attachment to the outcome. You can love someone deeply while letting go of your need to control them. You can want things to work out while letting go of your demand that they must. The difference is subtle, but life-changing. So what is letting go, actually? It's making space. Space for things to be as they are, not as you insist they should be. Space for people to make their own choices, even when those choices hurt you. Space for outcomes you didn't plan, but might be better than what you imagined. Space for reality to unfold without your constant interference and micromanagement. Space for the unexpected, the unplanned, the gifts you couldn't have orchestrated. It's trusting the process. Trusting that you don't need to micromanage every detail for things to unfold well. Trusting that the universe, or life, or whatever you want to call, the intelligence that makes flowers bloom and hearts beat, knows something you don't. Trusting that there's a bigger picture you can't see from your limited vantage point, and that not being in control doesn't mean things are out of control. It's releasing control over outcomes. You still take action. In fact, you take better action because you're not twisted up in anxiety about results. You do your best, give your all, show up fully, and then you open your hands and let reality respond however it will. It's still caring, still loving, still working toward what matters, but without strangling it, without gripping so tight you kill what you're trying to nurture. The Buddha said, "Letting go gives us freedom, and freedom is the only condition for happiness." Not wealth, not success, not being chosen, not getting what you want. Freedom, the freedom that comes from not being enslaved to outcomes, to other people's opinions, to your need for things to go your way. That freedom is happiness. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. Marcus worked at the same company for 12 years. He'd started as an entry-level analyst and worked his way up to senior director, a position he'd fought hard for, sacrificed for, built his entire identity around. When people asked what he did, he didn't just say the job title, he embodied it. It was who he was, not just what he did. His business cards were in his wallet, even on weekends. He checked emails at dinner, on vacation, from his daughter's soccer games. He'd missed anniversaries for important meetings, skipped family gatherings when deadlines loomed. His wife had learned to stop expecting him home for dinner. His kids knew Dad's phone came first. And then the company restructured. New leadership came in with new ideas, and suddenly, his department was redundant. They offered him a different role, lower title, less pay, reporting to someone 10 years younger than him. Or he could take the severance package. Marcus felt like the ground had disappeared beneath him. This wasn't supposed to happen. He'd done everything right, worked late, exceeded targets, been loyal when others left for better offers. He'd sacrificed his health, his marriage, his presence with his children. And for what? To be discarded like he was disposable. He took the severance because his pride wouldn't let him accept the demotion. And then he fell apart. For weeks, he barely left the house. He'd wake up at his usual time, put on a suit out of habit, then sit on the couch, scrolling job sites with mounting desperation. His identity had been so wrapped up in that title, that role, that company, he didn't know who he was without it. When his wife tried to comfort him, he'd snap at her. When his kids asked him to play, he'd say he was too busy, even though he wasn't busy at all. The grief was real. The anger was real. He felt betrayed, discarded, invisible. He applied to dozens of similar positions, convinced he just needed to get back to where he was. But the market had changed. Younger candidates with similar skills cost less. The rejections piled up, each one confirming his worst fear. He was washed up, irrelevant. 3 months in, sitting in his home office, surrounded by reminders of who he used to be, the awards, the framed org charts showing his climb, the photos from company events, Marcus had a moment of clarity. He was clinging to a version of himself that no longer existed. The job was gone. The title was gone. That chapter had ended whether he accepted it or not. And in holding on so tightly to what was, he was completely missing what could be. So he did something he'd been resisting. He let go. Not dramatically. No big announcement. He just stopped fighting reality. He took the business cards out of his wallet and threw them away. He unsubscribed from industry newsletters that only reminded him of what he'd lost. He stopped refreshing LinkedIn obsessively, comparing himself to former colleagues who still had their jobs. And then, with no plan, no agenda, just open space, something unexpected happened. His neighbor, knowing Marcus was between jobs, asked if he could help with a small business project. Nothing fancy, just some consulting work. Marcus almost said no. It was beneath his former level, but he had nothing else to do, so he said yes. The project was interesting in a way his corporate job hadn't been in years. It was scrappy, creative, direct. He could see the impact of his work immediately, instead of it disappearing into bureaucratic layers. One project led to another. Word spread. Within 6 months, Marcus had more consulting work than he could handle. Within a year, he'd built a thriving practice doing work he actually loved, with flexibility he'd never had, making almost as much as his old salary. More importantly, he was home for dinner. He coached his daughter's soccer team. He remembered his anniversary. He was present in a way he'd never been when he was climbing the corporate ladder. 2 years later, he'd tell you, getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. But I couldn't see it because I was holding on so tight to who I thought I should be that I couldn't become who I actually am. The new path couldn't emerge while he was clinging to the old one. This is what letting go creates. Space for what's actually trying to arrive. But how do you practice this? How do you train yourself to release when every instinct says grip tighter? The answer is meditation. Not as a relaxation technique, though it can relax you. Not as a way to stop thinking, though your thoughts might quiet. But as a laboratory where you learn the mechanics of letting go. Here's what happens when you sit down to meditate. You settle into your seat, close your eyes, bring your attention to your breath, and almost immediately, your mind has other ideas. A thought arises. I need to remember to email Sarah. Then another. Did I lock the car? Then a memory from this morning. A worry about tomorrow. A plan for next week. A regret from last year. Your mind is like a waterfall of thoughts, constant and unstoppable. The instruction in meditation is not to stop the thoughts. That's impossible, like trying to stop the ocean from waving. The instruction is to observe them without grabbing onto them. A thought arises. I need to email Sarah. Instead of following that thought into a whole mental thread about what the email should say, whether she'll respond well, what might happen if she doesn't, you simply notice, thinking about work, and you come back to your breath. Another thought, did I lock the car? Notice it. Worrying. Return to breath. You're not pushing thoughts away. That's just another form of control, another way of gripping. You're not judging yourself for having them. That's just more mental noise. You're simply watching them arise, acknowledging them, and letting them pass. Like clouds moving across the sky. At first, this is incredibly difficult. You'll get lost in thoughts constantly. You'll realize you've been planning tomorrow's meeting for 5 minutes without even noticing. You'll judge yourself for being bad at meditation. Then you'll notice you're judging yourself and realize that's just another thought to let go of. And this is where it gets interesting, because the same thing happens with emotions. You're sitting there, breathing, and suddenly you feel a wave of anxiety. It starts as a small flutter in your chest. Then it grows. Your heart rate increases. Your breath gets shallow. Your mind starts spinning stories about why you're anxious. The old pattern would be to either push it away, I shouldn't feel this, I'm meditating, I'm supposed to be peaceful, or get completely lost in it, believing every anxious thought, letting it spiral into catastrophe. But in meditation, you practice something different. You notice anxiety is here. You feel where it lives in your body, the tightness in your chest, the tension in your shoulders, the shakiness in your hands, the flutter in your stomach. You don't try to fix it, or figure out why it's there, or make it go away. You just observe it with curiosity, almost like a scientist studying a phenomenon. What does anxiety actually feel like when you're not running from it or drowning in it? And then something remarkable happens. The anxiety reaches a peak, intense, uncomfortable, almost unbearable. Your mind screams at you to do something, anything. Check your phone, get up, stop sitting here, feeling this awful feeling. And then, if you just stay with it, without feeding it with more thoughts, without creating stories about what it means, it begins to change. The intensity softens. The sharp edges dull. The wave that seemed like it would drown you starts to recede. Not because you did anything to it. Not because you fixed it, or solved it, or figured out its cause. But because that's what emotions do when you don't grab onto them or push them away. They arise, they peak, they pass. You realize, I am not the anxiety. I'm the space in which the anxiety appears and disappears. You are the sky. Emotions are weather. The sky is never threatened by the weather. It holds everything, the storms, the sunshine, the fog, the lightning, the gentle rain, without being changed by any of it. The sky doesn't try to make storms go away faster or hold on to sunshine longer. It simply allows whatever weather to be there and then to pass. This is what meditation teaches you. Everything passes if you don't feed it. Every thought, every emotion, every sensation arises from conditions and dissolves when those conditions change. Nothing is permanent. Nothing requires your grip to exist or your force to disappear. And once you've experienced this on the meditation cushion, watching anxiety come and go, watching anger arise and dissolve, watching craving appear and fade, you start to trust it in life. When anxiety shows up at work, you recognize this is weather. It will pass. When someone criticizes you and anger flares, you notice anger is here. I don't have to act on it or suppress it. I can just let it move through. This is how meditation trains you to let go, not as a concept, but as a lived experience, repeated thousands of times until it becomes your default way of being. There's a famous Zen story about a master and a student. The student comes to the master seeking wisdom, carrying all his knowledge, all his opinions, all his certainties about how the world works. The master invites him for tea. The master begins pouring tea into the student's cup. The cup fills. The master keeps pouring. The tea reaches the brim. The master keeps pouring. The tea overflows, spilling onto the table, onto the floor, hot liquid, going everywhere. "Stop," the student cries. The cup is full. It can't hold any more. The master sets down the teapot and smiles. Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and beliefs. How can I show you anything new unless you first empty your cup? This is what letting go creates. Empty space that can receive. When you're full of old grudges, old identities, old beliefs, old attachments, old certainties, old grievances, there's no room for anything new. The relationship you're clinging to might be blocking the one that's actually right for you. But you'll never know because your hands are too full to receive it. The belief you're defending might be blocking the truth that could set you free, but you can't see it because your cup is overflowing with certainty. The job you won't release might be preventing the calling that's trying to reach you, but there's no space for it to land. Sarah had been trying to get pregnant for 3 years. Fertility treatments, supplements, acupuncture, timing everything perfectly. Her life had become consumed by this one goal. Every month brought hope, then heartbreak. Every pregnancy announcement from friends felt like a knife. Her marriage was suffering under the strain. Sex had become mechanical, scheduled, joyless. She couldn't be around babies without crying. Her whole identity had narrowed to this one thing she couldn't have. Then her doctor told her the odds weren't good. She could keep trying, but the chances of success were very low. Sarah was devastated, but in that devastation, something shifted. She realized she'd been holding so tight to this one picture of motherhood, biological children, a certain number of kids, a certain timeline, that she couldn't see any other possibilities. So she and her husband made a decision. They'd stop trying. Not forever, just for now. They'd let go of the timeline, the pressure, the all-consuming focus. They started traveling again, reconnecting as a couple, remembering why they fell in love in the first place, considering adoption, fostering, even a child-free life, opening to possibilities they'd been too rigid to see. 6 months later, they started the adoption process, not as a backup plan, but as a genuine calling they couldn't have heard while desperately clinging to a different path. A year after that, they brought home their daughter. Sarah would tell you, "I had to let go of the baby. I imagined to receive the child who was actually meant for me. And she's perfect. Not the perfect I planned, but the perfect that is." The relationship that needed to end before the right one arrived. The belief that needed to die before truth could land. The dream that needed to dissolve before reality could surprise you. Making space before knowing what will fill it. This takes tremendous courage. Because when you let go, there's a moment of freefall where you have nothing to grip. No certainty, no control, no guarantee of what comes next. That moment is terrifying and also sacred. So, how do you practice this daily? Start your morning by asking, what can I let go of today? Maybe it's a small expectation that your partner will respond the way you want, that traffic will be light, that your coworker will finally do their job right. Let it go before the day even starts. Throughout the day, notice when you're gripping. Feel it in your body. The clenched jaw when someone disagrees with you. The tight shoulders when a plan changes. The knot in your stomach when things aren't going your way. That physical tension is your signal. You're holding too tight. In that moment, take a breath and consciously release. Soften your jaw. Drop your shoulders. Unclench your fists. Let your body teach your mind what release feels like. In the evening, review your day. What did I hold that I could release tomorrow? Maybe it's being right in that argument with your spouse. Maybe it's the perfect parking spot you got angry about losing. Maybe it's the plan that didn't work out the way you wanted. Start small. Practice with low-stakes situations. Let someone else choose the restaurant without lobbying for your preference. Let a conversation end without having the last word. Let a minor mistake go uncorrected. These small releases build the muscle of letting go. Maria started practicing this after a particularly stressful year where she'd tried to control everything and ended up controlling nothing. Every morning, she'd identify one small thing to release that day. Monday, letting go of needing her coffee made exactly right. When the barista gave her whole milk instead of oat, she drank it without complaint. Tuesday, releasing her attachment to a specific parking spot. She took the first one she found instead of circling for the perfect one. Wednesday, not correcting her colleague's minor factual error in a meeting. She let it go, realizing it didn't actually matter. They were tiny practices, almost silly. But over weeks and months, something shifted. She noticed she was less reactive, less tense, less exhausted by trying to control everything. And when a genuinely hard thing happened, her mother's cancer diagnosis, she had practiced letting go so many times in small ways that she knew how to do it when it really mattered. She couldn't control the cancer, the treatment, the outcome, but she could show up with love, without gripping, without demanding it be different than it was. That's the practice building toward the moment you truly need it. But here's what nobody tells you about letting go. Sometimes it hurts like hell. Sometimes letting go doesn't feel like relief. It feels like death. The grief of releasing something you love, someone you love, a dream you've carried for years. That grief is real and sacred and necessary. You can honor what was while releasing it. You can cry for what's ending, even as you make space for what's beginning. Letting go doesn't mean you didn't care. The tears prove you cared. The ache proves it mattered. Don't skip over the grief trying to get to some false spiritual transcendence where nothing hurts. That's spiritual bypassing, using enlightenment concepts to avoid feeling human emotions. Real letting go includes the hurt. Jennifer had wanted to be a mother since she was a little girl. She'd imagined it in detail, the nursery she'd decorate, the bedtime stories she'd read, the kind of mother she'd be, different from her own mother. But after years of fertility struggles, failed treatments, miscarriages that broke her heart each time, and finally, a medical diagnosis that made pregnancy impossible, she had to let that dream die. And it felt like dying. Not the peaceful acceptance you read about in books. Raw, gut-wrenching grief that came in waves so intense she'd double over from the pain of it. She'd see pregnant women and have to leave the room. She'd avoid baby showers because the jealousy and sadness were too much. She'd lie in bed at night mourning children who would never exist, imagining the faces she'd never see, the voices she'd never hear. Her therapist kept telling her to let go, to accept, to make peace with it. And she wanted to scream, "I'm trying, but it hurts." What finally helped was permission to grieve fully. To cry as long as she needed to cry. To rage at the unfairness, to ask why over and over, even though there was no answer, to mourn the loss of this specific dream before being ready to imagine different ones. Her grief group leader said something that changed everything. Letting go doesn't mean letting go of the pain. It means letting go of the resistance to the pain. Feel it all. That's how it moves through. Letting go didn't mean the sadness disappeared. It meant she stopped fighting the sadness. She let it move through her like a wave, trusting it would eventually recede, even when it felt endless. And it did. Slowly, over months, the waves got smaller, further apart. 2 years later, she and her husband were foster parents to 2 beautiful kids who needed them. Different than what she'd imagined, harder in some ways, more rewarding in others, but no less real, no less love. But she had to grieve the imagined before she could embrace the real. So, if you're in the process of letting go, and it hurts, know this: the hurt doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're doing it real. Let yourself feel it. Honor it. Don't rush past it trying to get to some prettier version of release. True acceptance includes the tears. And when you finally open your hands, when you finally release what you've been gripping, something shifts. Not just in you, but in how life responds to you. Let me show you what I mean. Think about a river for a moment. Not the idea of a river, but an actual river. Water moving from mountain to sea, always flowing, always finding its way. When a river encounters a boulder, it doesn't stop. It doesn't rage against the obstacle. It doesn't demand the boulder move. It simply flows around it. Sometimes over it, if the water is high enough. Sometimes under it, finding channels through the rock. Sometimes it splits into 2 streams that rejoin on the other side. The river never fights. It never forces. It finds the path of least resistance and follows it with complete trust. And here's what's remarkable. The river always reaches the ocean. Always. Eventually. No matter how many boulders, how many twists and turns, how many detours, through valleys, it didn't plan to visit. The river doesn't need to know the whole route before it starts flowing. It doesn't need a map or a guarantee. It just moves in the direction of natural flow, and that's enough. Watch how water behaves. It's soft, yielding, seemingly weak. You can put your hand through it. It takes the shape of whatever container holds it. Yet given enough time, water carves canyons through solid rock. It shapes coastlines, creates valleys, transforms landscapes, not through force, but through persistent, patient flow. The Grand Canyon wasn't created by the Colorado River fighting the rock. It was created by water following its nature, flowing consistently, never stopping, wearing away what seemed immovable through sheer presence over time. This is what a human life looks like when you stop forcing. You encounter obstacles, rejections, delays, closed doors, people saying no, plans that don't work out. But instead of exhausting yourself trying to move the unmovable, you find another way. You stay flexible, adaptable, responsive to what actually is, instead of demanding what should be. You trust that there's always a path forward, even when you can't see it yet. And you discover something the river knows instinctively. The path of least resistance isn't laziness or giving up, it's wisdom. It's recognizing that life wants to flow through you, wants to work with you, wants to carry you toward where you need to be, but only if you stop damming it up with your desperate need to control every detail. The river doesn't arrive at the ocean by force. It arrives by flow. But here's what trips people up. They confuse flow with doing nothing. They think if they're not forcing, they're just sitting back, waiting for magic to happen. That's not what this teaching means. There's a crucial difference between effort and force. Effort is aligned action. It's doing your best, showing up fully, giving everything you have to what matters, but staying open to outcomes, flexible about how things unfold, willing to adjust when reality provides feedback. Effort says, I'll do my part and trust the process. It's working hard while holding the results lightly. It's caring deeply while not being attached to a specific outcome. When you're in effort, there's a sense of rightness to what you're doing. Even when it's challenging, there's an underlying current of, yes, this is worth it. You feel engaged, energized by the work itself, not just the potential reward. Force is desperate manipulation. It's trying to control not just your actions, but everyone else's responses, the timing, the exact way things have to go for you to feel okay. Force says, this must work out exactly as I planned, or I'm not okay. It's working hard while strangling the outcome. It's caring so much that you can't breathe until you get what you want. When you're in force, there's a quality of violence to it, even when you're being outwardly polite. You're pushing against reality, trying to bend it to your will. And reality doesn't bend easily. It pushes back. Effort energizes you. Even when it's hard work, there's a sense of rightness to it, like you're swimming with a current. Force depletes you. It drains your energy, creates anxiety, leaves you exhausted, even when you're getting results, because the results never feel secure. You can feel the difference in your body. Effort has a quality of openness to it. Your breathing stays relatively calm, even when you're working intensely. Your shoulders are down, relaxed. There's focus, but not desperation. Your muscles are engaged, but not rigid. Force feels tight everywhere. Your jaw clenches without you noticing. Your chest constricts, making your breathing shallow. Your thoughts loop obsessively, rehearsing outcomes, planning for every contingency. You can't rest even when you're physically resting, because mentally, you're still gripping, controlling, manipulating. The body never lies about this. When you're forcing, Your body carries the tension as chronic stress. When you're in aligned effort, your body knows the difference. There might be fatigue from work, but not the bone-deep exhaustion that comes from fighting reality. Angela learned this difference when interviewing for a job she really wanted. For previous interviews, she'd prepared obsessively, memorizing answers, researching every person on the panel, rehearsing every possible question until she sounded robotic. She'd go intense, trying to control how she came across, monitoring every word, terrified of making a wrong move. The desperation showed. She could see it in the interviewers' faces, a subtle pulling back, a discomfort with her intensity. And she never got those jobs. But this time, something was different. She'd prepared well. Yes, she knew her skills, understood the role, had thoughtful questions. But she also knew she'd be okay if she didn't get it. She'd been working on herself in therapy, learning that her worth wasn't tied to external validation. She had a life she enjoyed, friends who loved her, work she found meaningful. This job would be great, but not getting it wouldn't destroy her. She walked into that interview as herself, not a performance of who she thought they wanted, but actually herself. When they asked difficult questions, she answered honestly instead of saying what she thought they wanted to hear. When she didn't know something, she said so, without apologizing excessively. She showed up fully, but she wasn't begging. She was presenting herself, not selling herself. They offered her the job the next day. Later, her now boss told her, "You were the only candidate who seemed like you'd be fine either way. Everyone else needed the job desperately. You wanted it, but you didn't need it." That confidence made all the difference. This is the paradox. When you stop needing something so desperately, you become more likely to receive it. And this brings us to one of Buddhism's most misunderstood teachings, karma. Most people think karma is cosmic punishment and reward. Do good things, get good results. Do bad things, get punished later. Like some divine accountant in the sky keeping score of every action. That's not what karma is. Karma is natural law, like gravity. Gravity doesn't punish you when you fall. It's just physics responding to conditions. Karma doesn't reward or punish you. It's just cause and effect playing out through your energy, your actions, your intentions. You're not being judged by the universe. There's no cosmic judge deciding if you deserve good things or bad things. You're experiencing the natural echo of what you put out into the world. If you throw a ball at a wall, it bounces back. Not because the wall is punishing you or rewarding you, but because that's how physics works. Action creates reaction. Energy creates echo. Karma is like that. What you send out comes back, not as morality, but as natural consequence. If you plant apple seeds, you get apples, not oranges. Not because the universe is being fair or unfair, but because that's what apple seeds produce. Your actions are seeds. The consequences are the fruit. The Buddha taught, what you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create. This isn't mystical manifesting or magical thinking. It's practical observation of how consciousness shapes experience. If you think anxious thoughts all day, you become an anxious person, not as punishment, but because you're practicing anxiety. Your brain creates neural pathways that reinforce the pattern. You're literally training yourself to be anxious through repetition. If you feel scarcity constantly, never enough money, never enough time, never enough love, you attract more experiences of lack. Not because the universe is withholding from you, but because scarcity consciousness makes you unable to see abundance even when it's present. You filter reality through the lens of lack. If you imagine the worst in every situation, you create a life shaped by fear, not because you manifested bad things through negative thinking, but because fear-based choices lead to fear-based outcomes. When you make decisions from fear, you create fearful realities. And the opposite is equally true. If you practice gratitude, you become someone who notices what's working instead of only what's broken. Your brain gets better at finding good things because you've trained it to look for them. If you feel abundance, appreciation for what you have, trust that there's enough, you start noticing opportunities you were blind to before. Not because new opportunities magically appeared, but because your consciousness expanded to see what was always there. If you imagine possibilities instead of problems, you create a life oriented toward growth rather than defense. Your choices change. Your energy changes. And what you attract changes in response. This is actually liberating, not limiting, because it means you have power, not power to control outcomes. You can't force the universe to give you what you want, but power to shift your energy, which influences what flows toward you and what you're able to receive when it arrives. If you vibrate in peace, peaceful situations and people resonate with you. If you vibrate in trust, opportunities that require trust find you. If you vibrate in love, love recognizes itself in you. But if you vibrate in desperation, you attract more reasons to feel desperate, not as punishment, but as resonance. If you vibrate in lack, abundance can't find a match in your frequency. If you vibrate in fear, you'll keep encountering what you fear because you're attuned to it. Not because you're cursed. Not because you're being tested by a cruel universe, but because energy attracts like energy. This is physics, not morality. This is what changed everything for Melissa. She'd been single for 3 years and desperately wanted a relationship. She tried everything, dating apps where she swiped for hours, setups from well-meaning friends, going to events specifically to meet someone, even when she didn't enjoy them. Every date felt like an audition where she was simultaneously the actor and the harsh critic. Every conversation was her mentally calculating, is this the one? Could this work? What if it doesn't? What's wrong with me if it doesn't? She'd get excited about someone after one good conversation, then immediately anxious about losing them before anything had even begun. She'd text too much, overanalyze every response or non-response, create entire relationship narratives after one coffee date. And it never worked. Every connection fizzled within weeks. She'd get ghosted, slow-faded, friend-zoned, or told, "I'm just not ready for something serious right now." She felt broken, unlovable, like everyone else could find love, except her. She'd go to weddings and feel physically sick with jealousy. She'd see couples holding hands and wonder what they had that she didn't. Then she hit bottom, a particularly painful rejection from someone she'd been seeing for 6 weeks, who told her she was too intense, too eager, too much. She spent that night crying on her bathroom floor at 2 in the morning, asking the universe, "What's wrong with me?" And in that moment of complete surrender, something shifted. She stopped trying. Not forever, just for now. She deleted the dating apps, every single one, told her friends to stop setting her up, because the pity in their eyes when it didn't work out was becoming unbearable. Decided to focus on herself for 6 months. No dating, no searching, no hoping for someone to complete her. She started doing things she'd been putting off until she had a partner to do them with. Took a pottery class she'd been curious about for years. Went on a solo trip to Portugal, which terrified her, but also freed her. Invested in friendships she'd been neglecting while obsessively dating. Started therapy to work on why she was so desperate for external validation, where this belief came from that she wasn't enough alone. And something unexpected happened. She started to genuinely enjoy her life. Not in a, "I'm pretending to be happy while secretly still desperate" way, but genuinely. She'd go to dinner alone and actually enjoy the food, the ambience, her own company, instead of seeing it as sad. She'd come home to an empty apartment and feel peaceful instead of lonely. Her energy shifted from "I'm incomplete without someone" to "I'm whole, and if someone wonderful wants to join this life I'm building, that would be lovely." 4 months into her 6-month break from dating, she met someone. Not through an app, or a setup, or going somewhere specifically to meet men. At her pottery class, of all places. They started as friends, laughing over their terrible bowls, then getting coffee after class. Then something grew naturally, unhurried, without her analyzing every moment or trying to make it happen. A year later, they moved in together, and she'd tell you, "He didn't complete me. I was already complete. He joined something whole, not filled something empty. That's the only reason it works." The opportunity came when she stopped chasing it. Her energy shifted first, from desperate to peaceful, from empty to full, from needing to wanting. And then reality responded to that new energy. This is how karma works in real time. But timing matters too, and this is where trust becomes essential. Because sometimes the right thing doesn't arrive when you want it. Sometimes there's delay, waiting, silence that feels like abandonment. And we interpret delay as denial. We think, not now, means not ever. But that's not true. Sometimes, not yet just means not yet. Think about seeds planted in soil. When you plant a seed in the ground, nothing visible happens for weeks, sometimes months, depending on what you've planted. If you dug it up every few days to check on it, you'd kill it. But underground, everything is happening. Roots spreading through dark soil, finding nutrients and water. Structure forming, cells multiplying, energy gathering for the moment when it breaks through soil into sunlight. The seed isn't failing to grow just because you can't see it yet. It's growing in the dark, in the invisible, in the timing that nature knows, and you don't. You can't rush a seed by pulling on the sprout. You can't make an oak tree grow faster by demanding it. Nature has its own timeline, and that timeline is wiser than your impatience. What's happening in the waiting is preparation. You're becoming ready for what you've asked for. Skills you need are developing. Lessons you need to learn are being learned. The person you need to become to handle what's coming is being shaped. The circumstances are aligning in ways you can't orchestrate from your limited view. People are moving into position. Opportunities are being prepared. Timing is synchronizing across multiple variables you can't even see. And often, the thing itself is also becoming ready for you. David and his wife spent 2 years looking for a house. They found one they loved in a neighborhood they dreamed of, made an offer they could barely afford, and got outbid by $15,000. They were devastated. It had felt perfect, like it was meant to be theirs, and now it was gone to someone else. Someone with more money, someone who got there first, someone luckier. They kept looking, but nothing compared. Every house felt like a compromise, a second choice. They started to think maybe they'd never find the right place. Maybe they'd price themselves out. Maybe they should just settle. 3 months after losing that house, another one came on the market in the same neighborhood. Same style, similar size, but this one had something the first one didn't. A detached studio in the backyard, perfect for David's woodworking, which he'd only recently taken up as a hobby that was becoming a passion. They made an offer immediately and got it. No bidding war, just a clean acceptance. Later, David realized if they'd gotten the first house, he never would have had space for woodworking, which had become central to his life and sense of purpose. The delay wasn't denial, it was timing. He needed those 3 months to discover what he actually needed, not just what he thought he wanted. Looking back, he could see the universe wasn't saying no to his dreams. It was saying, not that one, this one, trust me. This is what maturity looks like spiritually. Peace in uncertainty. Not knowing how things will work out, but trusting they will. Not having all the answers, but being okay with living in questions. It's taking action without anxiety about results, doing your part with full commitment, and then releasing your grip on how it unfolds. It's patience without passivity, not just sitting back waiting for life to happen to you, but actively participating while staying flexible about outcomes. It's showing up fully without needing external validation that you're on the right path, trusting the quiet knowing inside you more than the loud opinions around you. It's the calm that comes from knowing what's mine will find me. Not maybe, not hopefully, but knowing it as surely as you know the sun will rise. Not as magical thinking, but as trust in the natural intelligence of life. And this trust, this calm presence, is magnetic. When you stop chasing, you start attracting. Desperation repels people, opportunities, good things, not because you don't deserve them, but because desperation is loud, anxious energy that makes others uncomfortable. Think about someone who's desperate for friends. They try too hard, laugh too loudly at jokes that aren't funny, agree with everything, have no boundaries. You can feel their need radiating off them, and it makes you want to step back, not closer. Trust attracts. People want to be around calm, grounded people who aren't trying to extract something from them. Opportunities flow toward those who seem ready to handle them without falling apart. Good things find those who have space to receive them because they're not clutching desperately at everything. This isn't magical thinking. It's energetic reality. People feel your energy before they hear your words. They sense whether you're coming from fullness or emptiness, trust or fear, desperation or peace. Employers can tell if you need the job desperately versus genuinely want it. Potential partners sense if you're looking for someone to complete you versus someone to share your already complete life with. Friends know if you're trying to use them to fill a void versus genuinely enjoying their company. Sarah had been applying to jobs for months with no success. Every interview, she came across as desperate, talking too much, trying too hard to prove herself, subtly begging them to choose her. Then she got a temporary contract doing work she enjoyed. Suddenly, she wasn't desperately job hunting. She was working, engaged, fulfilled for the moment, paying her bills. Her next interview was completely different. She showed up confident because she didn't need them. She already had work. She asked good questions instead of just trying to impress. She was herself instead of performing what she thought they wanted. They offered her the permanent position on the spot. The shift wasn't in her resume or skills. Those hadn't changed. It was in her energy. From desperate to content, from needing to choosing. That's what trust does. It makes you magnetic to what's actually meant for you. But how do you maintain this trust when you can't see where you're going? Imagine walking through a forest at night with only a small flashlight. The beam illuminates maybe 10 feet ahead of you. You can't see the full path stretching into the distance. You don't know what's around the next bend or over the next hill. You can't see how far you have to go, or if you're even heading the right direction. All you can see is the next few steps immediately in front of you. But you can see the next step clearly. And when you take that step, the light moves with you, revealing the next one, then the next, then the next. You don't need to see the whole path before you begin. You just need to see enough to take the next step and trust that each step will reveal the one after it. This is what trust looks like in practice. Not having all the answers before you begin, not knowing the whole plan before taking action, but moving forward with what you can see, trusting that clarity comes through movement, not before it. You don't need the whole map. You just need to know the next right thing, and then do it. The forest path is dark, yes, but your light is enough for now, and that has to be enough. Because this is how all paths are walked, one step at a time, with only enough light to see what's directly ahead, trusting that the way will reveal itself as you go. But how do you hear what's next? How do you know which step to take when there are so many directions you could go? When the forest is so dark and the choices seem endless? The answer comes in the quiet. The world is so loud. Think about your day. From the moment you wake, there's noise. Your phone buzzes with notifications before your eyes are fully open. Messages, emails, news alerts, app updates, someone's opinion about something happening somewhere. You scroll through your feed while still in bed. Other people's highlight reels, arguments in comment sections, catastrophes from across the globe, advertisements telling you what you need to be complete. Then the day begins in earnest. Traffic sounds, podcast voices, music filling every quiet moment, conversations at work, the television in the background at home, more scrolling, more notifications, more voices telling you what to think, what to buy, what to fear, what to want. And underneath all that external noise is the internal noise, louder still. Your mind planning tomorrow while you're supposed to be present today, replaying yesterday's conversation, rewriting what you should have said, worrying about next week, next month, next year, judging yourself for what you ate, what you didn't do, who you're not becoming fast enough. The constant buzz of modern life isn't just external, it's internal, relentless, exhausting, and we're addicted to it. Not because noise is pleasant, but because silence is terrifying. In silence, we have to face what we've been running from. In silence, the questions we've been avoiding get louder. In silence, we meet ourselves, not the curated version we present to the world, but the raw, unedited truth of who we actually are. So we stay busy. We fill every gap with sound, with activity, with distraction. We call people while we're walking. We listen to podcasts while we're cooking. We scroll while we're watching television, because even that isn't stimulating enough. We've become terrified of being alone with our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own presence. And in that constant noise, we lose something essential, the ability to hear what's true. Claire had never been anywhere truly quiet in her adult life. Cities, suburbs, constant connectivity, noise was her normal. So when her therapist suggested a silent meditation retreat, she laughed. I can't even sit still for 5 minutes without checking my phone. But something in her knew she needed it. The anxiety was getting worse. The insomnia, the sense that she was running on a treadmill that only went faster. So she signed up for a weekend silent retreat before she could talk herself out of it. No phones, no books, no journals, no talking, just silence and meditation for 48 hours. The first evening, sitting in the meditation hall with 30 other people, Claire thought she might lose her mind. Her thoughts were deafening. Shopping lists, work emails, conversations she needed to have, problems she needed to solve. Her mind was like a television, flipping through channels at high speed, never settling. She wanted to run, actually physically get up and leave. The discomfort was unbearable, not physical pain, but the sheer exposure of being alone with herself. But she stayed. The first night, she barely slept. Her mind raced with everything she was missing, everything she should be doing, instead of sitting here doing nothing. The second day was worse. In the morning meditation, memories started surfacing, things she hadn't thought about in years. A fight with her mother when she was 16. The moment she realized her marriage was ending. The choice she made that she'd been second-guessing ever since. Emotions rose up without her permission. Grief she'd been postponing. Anger she'd been suppressing. Fear she'd been outrunning with constant busyness. She cried during the afternoon sitting, quiet tears that wouldn't stop. She felt raw, exposed, like all her protective layers had been stripped away. But she kept sitting. And then, on the third day, something shifted. The thoughts were still there, but they started to have space between them, like clouds with blue sky visible between them, instead of one solid grey mass. The emotions still arose, but they didn't consume her the way they had. She could watch sadness come, peak, and pass, without getting lost in the story of why she was sad. And in those spaces between thoughts, between emotions, there was something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of something deeper than feeling. A quiet underneath the noise that had always been there, waiting for her to notice. In the final meditation, she heard it, not a voice, but a knowing. A clarity about the decision she'd been agonizing over for months, not from thinking it through one more time, but from finally being quiet enough to hear what she already knew. She left the retreat different, not fixed, not enlightened, but changed. She'd touched something real underneath, all her anxious doing, and now she knew it was there. 6 months later, she'd tell her therapist, "I spent years running from silence because I thought it was empty. But it's not empty at all. It's full of everything I'd been too loud to hear." Because silence isn't the absence of something. It's the presence of everything. When the external noise stops, you can finally hear the internal wisdom that's been speaking all along. When the mind quiets, clarity appears. When you stop filling every moment with distraction, you start to notice what's actually here. Silence is full of presence, full of awareness, full of the truth you've been talking over. The universe doesn't shout its guidance. It whispers. The deepest truths don't announce themselves loudly. They emerge quietly in the spaces between thoughts, in the stillness you've been avoiding. The Buddha taught, silence is an empty space, and space is the home of the awakened mind. Empty not as lacking, but as open. Space not as void, but as possibility. In silence, you remember who you are beneath all the roles, all the doing, all the noise of identity. Answers arrive in quiet, never in chaos. Think of a pond. When the water is still, you can see straight to the bottom. Every stone, every plant, every detail, reflected with perfect clarity. But when the water is disturbed by wind and waves, you can't see anything. The surface is all chaos, reflections fractured, depth invisible. Your mind is like that pond. In stillness, you see clearly. In constant disturbance, you can't see anything true, just the churning surface, the endless agitation. Silence is how the water becomes still. But there's another noise to contend with, the voice in your head. Even when external silence arrives, internal noise continues. The voice that criticizes everything you do. The voice that worries obsessively about everything that could go wrong. The voice that plans every detail to feel in control. This voice loops the same thoughts endlessly. Did I say the wrong thing? What if I fail? Why am I not further along? Everyone else has it figured out except me. Round and round, the same mental tracks worn deeper with each repetition. But here's what you need to understand. This voice is not wisdom. Wisdom is quiet. It doesn't argue or convince or loop endlessly. It simply knows, and it waits for you to be quiet enough to hear it. The loud, insistent voice is ego, the part of you that believes it needs to control everything to survive, that mistakes thinking about problems for solving them, that confuses mental noise for productivity. Learning to distinguish between these voices is essential. The ego voice is loud, repetitive, fear-based. It says, "You're not enough. Do more. Try harder. What if? What if? What if? The wisdom voice is quiet, singular, love-based. It says things once, calmly, and doesn't need to repeat itself, because truth doesn't require convincing. When you're trying to make a decision, and your mind is spinning with pros and cons, arguments and counter-arguments, that's ego trying to control outcomes. When you suddenly know, just know, without knowing how you know, that's wisdom speaking in silence. The challenge is we're so used to the loud voice that we've forgotten how to hear the quiet one. But you don't need a weekend retreat to find silence. You can create it right now, today, in small moments woven through your normal life. 5 minutes in the morning before you reach for your phone, just sitting at the edge of your bed, breathing, noticing you're alive without immediately filling that awareness with tasks and worries. Phone-free moments throughout your day, walking from your car to the office without a podcast in your ears, eating lunch without scrolling, driving in silence instead of with music or talk radio filling every second, sitting with your morning tea or coffee and doing nothing else, not reading, not planning your day, not solving problems, just sitting, feeling the warmth of the cup, tasting the drink, being present with this simple moment. The revolutionary act in our modern world is doing nothing. Not productive nothing where you're secretly planning, not guilty, nothing where you're thinking about what you should be doing instead, but true nothing. Being present without agenda, without performance, without purpose, beyond simply being. This feels radical because we've been conditioned to believe our worth comes from our doing, our productivity, our constant motion forward. But your worth isn't in what you produce. It's in what you are, consciousness itself, awareness, the space in which all doing happens. And that space reveals itself in silence. So what emerges when you finally stop? At first, everything you've been avoiding, the grief you've been postponing, the anger you've been suppressing, the fear you've been outrunning with constant busyness, the loneliness you've been covering with constant connection. It's uncomfortable. That's why we avoid it. But if you stay with the discomfort instead of immediately filling the silence again, something shifts. Then comes clarity about what actually matters. Not what you think should matter, not what everyone says should matter, but what truly matters to you, beneath all the noise of other people's expectations. The answer to the question you've been asking appears, not from more thinking, but from finally being quiet enough to hear what you already know. The truth about the relationship, whether to stay or go. The truth about the job, whether it's nourishing you or depleting you. The truth about the path, whether you're walking it because it's yours or because it's expected. It was always there, this knowing. The noise just blocked it. And in this silence, you start to recognize something. What truly belongs to you has a different quality than what you're chasing. It doesn't scream for your attention. It doesn't force itself on you. It doesn't demand you choose it right now or lose it forever. It simply arrives. Quietly, naturally, like it was always meant to find you. You know something now that you didn't know 3 hours ago. Not from your mind, but from somewhere deeper. Change is natural, like seasons, like breath. Fighting it creates suffering. Accepting it creates space. Release is freedom. The open hand receives more than the clenched fist ever could. Peace isn't out there waiting for you to earn it. It's here, now, in the letting go. So how do you live this? Each morning ask, what can I release today? Not acquire, not achieve. Release. Throughout your day, notice when you're gripping. Feel it in your jaw, your shoulders, your breath. That's your signal to soften, to open, to trust the flow instead of forcing the outcome. Each evening, what am I still holding that I could let go? Not as failure, but as practice. Imagine someone waking tomorrow lighter, still facing challenges, but not strangling them, moving through the day with open hands, trusting each moment without demanding it be different. That could be you. These teachings are here whenever you need them. Return when you're gripping too tight. Return when the world feels too loud. Return when you've forgotten that peace lives in release. May you walk gently with yourself. May you trust what's unfolding without strangling it. May you know that peace comes not from getting what you want, but from wanting what is. Until we meet again, breathe easy. You're exactly where you need to be. If this brought you peace, share where you're listening from and what you're releasing today. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear.